And we should be live in a moment. Okay, I don't have any audience yet, but alright, and thank you. Notification for telling me that I'm now live streaming. Okay, boom. And we're going to wait until we actually have an audience. Really? I don't see anybody yet. Could be. Well, it may be that I was a little bit preoccupied with something, and I was a little slow with the pre-announcement. So maybe that pre-announcement's more important than I think it is. Okay, here people are coming in. Hey, C. Norzel. Glad to see you back. Hang on, I'm going to turn the... How's the sound for those out there? Are we clipping? Because my levels are a little weird today. So, all right. Hey, welcome to our stream. This is going to be citizenship by investment or heritage. And Will, would you say something so that, would you say hello? Okay, great. So, C. Norzel, if you can hear both me and Will, then I think we're good. All right. So, hold on. Okay. Will, would you say something, please? Darn. They're not hearing you. So hang on. No. Darn. Nothing yet. Okay, hold on. We're going to have an issue here. This is weird. I had no problem with... I had no problem when we did the one with Simon. That's why Hmm. Yeah. Um, uh, testing, testing. Well, my mixer, it says desktop audio. It's not getting. Um, hang on, I'm going to try something. Now say something.
Yep.
Did
Testing,
that
1, 2, 3.
did that help? Um, hey, Norzel, if you hear Will, please
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
let me know, because I am having issues with. Ah, okay. Now you can hear him. Okay, bizarrely, turning on the video capture helps. Okay, I have no idea why, but we got a working setup. I'm going to go with it.
I think
All right.
I think I'm
Hey,
swallowed.
this is Will. He's our citizenship by investment person, and he is going to help us with. Uh, he is going to help us with he's going to tell us all about getting citizenship by investment or heritage. Go for it, Will.
Hi, I'm Will. I heard I'm a little quiet.
Yeah.
Normally I'm not, but if we could turn it up a little bit. But yeah, this is my citizenship by investment or heritage. We're going to be covering a lot of different types of citizenship. I get really excited about this. Uh, I'm Will. I have a degree in political science. I am a dual citizen. I hope to become a quad citizen. Uh, One of my passions is just helping others get citizenship. And I think borders are stupid. I don't like borders. Citizenships help tear down those borders and those restrictions. That's one of the reasons why I really like to do this. So just so you know, this talk is not legal advice. It's not about how to leave today. I'm not telling you what you must do or what countries to go to or what countries are safe. We are going to be discussing countries where I personally think that they're unsafe. So I just want you all to be aware that these things that we're talking about, they're overarching concepts, they're examples, and they might not be able to fit your personal need right now, but we can find a country that might be able to work with you or for you. So let's jump into this. Some of the benefits: you get increased visa-free travel, increased places where you can live and work legally. You have more consulate protections when you carry 2 passports. If someone takes one of your passports, this is a common thing in human trafficking. Someone steals your passport. If you have another one, you're able to then get out of the country, get somewhere else, and help yourself. When you have a second citizenship, they can't stop you from entering, but they can arrest you when you enter if you're on the run, if something like that is happening. So just be aware of that. If you are wanted for a crime, if that crime would make you inadmissible to go to a country, like let's say the UK, you got a DUI in the US, you want to go to the UK. If you have UK citizenship, they won't stop you from entering. If you are on the run from trying to get prosecuted for your DUI, they could still arrest you in the UK. So just be aware of these things. Some of the reasons why you might not want another citizenship: taxes. So if you're looking at the US or ETRA, they tax their citizens globally. France might start doing this. If you lose your original citizenship, you might not want to. Some countries will make you give it up, like the Netherlands, for example. If you get Netherlands citizenship, you have to give up your other ones. If you're worried about being a criminal, in your new country. If your lifestyle is deemed to be a crime, that's one of the reasons why you might not want this. You could become banned in some countries. When you're banned in another country just from your citizenship, that's generally not a country you want to visit to begin with. So I wouldn't worry about that as much. Banking, it can be harder. In my experience, it hasn't been. Security clearances, normally they'll tell you, hey, if we don't like that other citizenship, get rid of it. So you'll have that option whether to keep your job or keep your citizenship. Conscription or military service. This is one I don't know a ton about. In these changing times, generally it's just the males that end up in military service. It's also within a specific age range. These can all change as time goes on. So you also lose some consular protection. So let's say, you're living in Germany and the German government wants to arrest you for something. You can no longer just go to the U.S. embassy. The U.S. embassy will say, well, you're actually a German citizen. You've got to stay in Germany and face the crimes. So just be aware of that. So name and gender. Some countries don't like X. So for example, on your passport, you have an X, like the UAE, I believe, they won't let you transit through. Things like that. I'm not saying one way or the other what you need to have on your passport. I'm just letting you know that your passport and your birth certificate are seen as like foundational documents. So when you do citizenship by descent or investment, these are the two documents that they're really going to be reviewing and trying to make a determination on your eligibility. So they want everything to match. That's always a big deal. And if it doesn't match, well, you have to have either a court order showing why it doesn't match. You have to change it back in some cases, or you have to amend the documents. So if you amend your birth certificate to match your passport, so it all has the same gender, then that should be fine. When a country sees that, they'll see that clear chain of you've got your birth certificate matching your passport, and then it matches your parents. So amending documents is something I'd recommend doing as soon as possible. Sometimes you can't amend a document. I believe amending birth certificates in Italy is extremely difficult, if not almost unheard of. So one of the things that'll happen is you'll get what's an one in the same court order. And this happens a lot when your descendant came over from another country and started using a different name. But all the birthdays the same, where they grew up, where they were born, all of that information is the same for all the other documents. So that court order is one of the things that you can use to help things match up. If that makes sense. So, real quick, I just want to touch on citizenship by birth of your soil. So, if you look over here in the Americas, it's a new world kind of thing. You're born on the soil, you get that citizenship. But all of us are already born. So if you want to have a kid somewhere, we can talk about that. It's called birth tourism. It happens all over the Americas, as you just saw. Argentina, after your child's born, you can sue for citizenship, saying you have an Argentinian child. Brazil, they'll let you apply for permanent residency after you have your child, and then you can get citizenship after living there for a year. In the U.S., they talk about anchor babies. They use that term all the time, and they say, like, oh, people are just coming here to have kids. Yes, their kid can get citizenship, but the parents aren't allowed to be here until that child is 21 years old. So it's a very long play to get a green card, in my opinion. I just wanted to touch on some marriage and common law marriage things. So if you're married to someone with a different citizenship, this is really important for you. because after X years being married, then you're able to apply. They might have requirements, like I think Germany has a background check and a language requirement. Same thing with Italy. A lot of countries have background and language checks for marriage. But if you're only looking for a visa, even if you're not married, a lot of countries will allow you, if you can show and prove that you've been living together. So show like a lease, a joint bank account. If your car is only in your name, maybe put it in both your names. Something to show like, hey, you guys have been living together, you have shared assets. Also, don't get fake married. Don't lie on these forums. This is going to be a very common thing. Fake marriage is like, it's the oldest trick in the citizenship playbook. People try to do it for years, for decades, and they get caught. They've gotten good at catching people. So if you're not actually in love, if you're not actually living with someone, I would not recommend getting a marriage just to satisfy a requirement to get a citizenship. As I said before, one of those foundational documents is your birth certificate. So you want to order it from the government. So whoever issued it, if it's California, order it from the state of California. I use vitalcheck.com. The reason I use vitalcheck.com is because it's what's recommended by a number of states to order birth certificates. I don't endorse them otherwise. I only like them because it's the only option to order a birth certificate online for most states in the United States. So what do you order? You order a long form or an extended birth certificate. This is important because it has more information. It has your parents' names, their birth dates. It has a lot of extra information. So a lot of countries will want that. If you can't get the long form or extended, or if there isn't an option when you're ordering that, they might just ask why you want it and then decide for you which type to get you. So then you say dual citizen or legal or governmental. And when you do that, they're going to send you what you need. For example, if you're doing this from the state of New York, they'll send a letter of exemplification from like the city of New York saying, this document is a real document. It's kind of weird. If you're in New York City or you have someone in your family from New York City, talk to me. I can help walk you through that. So all of these options all require documents. Most of these documents need an apostille. We're going to talk about this. Some require only photocopies, which is kind of crazy. So Canada, the proof of citizenship, that's their kind of like citizenship by descent. They only require photocopies. I always recommend take photocopies of your documents. Order 2 copies of your documents. Sometimes you'll end up taking a document, and when you apply for citizenship, they will keep it. If you get rejected from your application, they will still keep your document and won't give it back to you, some consulates. So just be aware of that. I like ordering 2. So what is the apostille? I brought that up, and this is a big thing in the international community. It basically certifies that it's real. So that birth certificate will need one of these stapled on top of it by whatever state issued it. So if you're in Alabama, you've got an Alabama birth certificate, Alabama will issue the apostille to you. If it's something from the federal government, then the federal government will issue it. The federal government doesn't issue an apostille for any state documents. How long is it good for? Basically the life of the document. Some consulates will want your documents to be newer. An apostille won't be placed on an old document most of the time. So let's say you have a birth certificate from 20 years ago when you were born. They might not allow it to get an apostille. You might have to order a new original copy. when you do that, when you order that copy, they're going to then be able to certify it and put this certification on there. I'm not going to list out all 127 different countries that are currently signed on to the Apostille Convention that use this, but more countries. I think Bangladesh is coming online in 2025. Canada and Rwanda came on this year for allowing for issuing apostilles. So like new countries are coming along all the time. So I just want everyone to be aware that this certification you're going to need on your birth certificate when you're doing a lot of the things we're going to be talking about. So let's get into it. We're going to talk investment, naturalization, and descent. I threw naturalization in as a bonus for you guys. Investment has fast, clear, it's a fast timeline in the citizenship world, just so you know. You've got clear rules. So the government will list out what are the things you need to do. All the programs I've looked into, they all require background checks. Most of the time, it starts at 200K and goes up. So the types of investments, you got bank deposits that are 500K, bonds 500K. Why you would want to do a donation when you look, a bank deposit or a bond can get you there. Well, one of the big things here is that donation, that's going to work a lot faster than having bonds or a bank deposit most of the time. If you've got a business, a lot of countries will want your business. They will want you to move your business to their country. So if you invest enough, then they'll give you a citizenship. One of the things I like to focus on, though, is real estate. With real estate, you get some of the cheaper options. So you buy a home in one of these countries. You know, if you look at a lot of the American homes, the prices today, they match these prices. So you could end up living in a new home in one of these countries and have citizenship right away. So it's definitely something to consider. Pakistan, I just want to note as the absolute cheapest. Again, not necessarily a country that you might want citizenship in, but it is the cheapest option. They require an $18,000 bank deposit, but you have to be a Commonwealth.
Hey, we have a question.
Sure.
Do you order the apostille at the same time as the birth certificate, or do you have to get the latter first and then get it apostilled?
That is a great question. And it depends on the state. There are some states that allow you to order them both at the same time. I like to call Vital Check and say, hey, this is what I need. And then they're generally able to do it, not always. I haven't found an online option that allows both to be done at the same time. I recommend them being done at the same time because it saves you time. But I know there's a lot of forms you can fill out. So when you're ordering it from the government itself, like a mail-in form, they might have an option for you. But yeah, that's a great way to speed things up. Any other questions?
No, although Eric says they can hear better when I'm muted, so I suspect it's a levels issue. It's picking up my levels.
All right. So, where to view some options? Passports.io, residencies.io. These two websites, they don't have the absolute most up-to-date information, but what's neat about them is you can kind of see some of the different investment options out there. Henley and Partners, they're not a company I endorse, but they are the leader in this industry. There is an industry of selling citizenships and passports to people. Henley Global is the absolute leader in the industry. They partner with a number of governments They have partnered with oligarchs from Russia to help get them citizenship. There's a whole leaked documents that you can follow about them. But what they say on their site generally holds rather true for what's going on. If you have a lot of money and go with them, good on you. Official government sources. So this is something I want to. I don't have a slide for scams. I should have, but people will try to scam you when you're looking this stuff up. You'll see, oh, I can get a Mexican citizenship for $20,000. Like, it's a citizenship by investment program. But when you look on the government site for Mexico, they never mention it. It's not in any news articles. There could be someone in the back who works in the birth certificate office who says, hey, here's your Mexican birth certificate now, and now you can go apply for a passport. So just be aware these things exist. Do not use them. They get found out. Then they find out who got issued these birth certificates. They take away your citizenship, and they could charge you criminally. So I know in Italy, they had a scam that was happening. And so I highly recommend you go through the normal channels when you're doing this kind of stuff. You don't want to waste, $20, $30, $50,000 on what ultimately could last you maybe a day. So type of documents needed generally for citizenship by investment. Your background check. This is by your current government. So wherever you currently live or where you have lived. A proof of funds. So they're going to want like a certified bank statement. Birth certificate with that like apostille. And then your passport. So I wanted to briefly touch on naturalization. It can be one of the cheaper options. It can take 2 years, it can take 10 years, 20 years. You generally need to pass a test after you've lived there. All these years all depend on the country, just so you know, like which country. You've got to pass a background check normally. Puerto Rico. If you're an American citizen, you can go move to Puerto Rico and get citizenship in 1 year. It is the fastest. What it does for you, I'm not really sure. If Puerto Rico ever decides not to be a territory of the United States, it could be very interesting if you have Puerto Rican citizenship acquired by naturalization. Argentina and Peru. So these are 2 countries. There are more that allow you, after living there for 2 years, you can get citizenship. Most countries, though, 5 to 10 years to get their citizenship when you do naturalization. Again, you're going to need that background check, proof of living in country, birth certificate, and passport. There are other requirements that they could have. These differ from country to country. And then this is the last one we have for you. Just so you know, this one takes up probably the most of this this presentation. It's one that I personally have the most experience with also. So descent, it actually can be pretty fast depending on the country. Canada, I've heard of actually weeks for Canada to get your citizenship back. But again, there was a parent that was already Canadian, born in Canada, and they had birth to a child in the US. That US kid was able to get it in a few weeks. Italy, it could take years. I think the government now mandates in Italy that it has a minimum of 2 years or a maximum of 2 years now. So they've set a cap on the law. Some countries allow for 2 to 3 generations back, and I have a short list of those. And each country has its own rules. They're gonna set the rules, and they're gonna be a little bit different for every country. The types of documents needed. You could need a background check. This is really common for like Germany. Germany requires a background check, but Italy doesn't. Generally with background checks, I should have mentioned this, they're valid for 6 months. So let's say you're going to put in your application. You have to have your background check done within 6 months of submitting your application, even if your application takes 2 years to process, which is the current wait time for the German government. The birth certificate, again, like I said, this is that foundational document along with your passport. I've seen applications for minors, people who were just born. They say, well, we want them to have a US passport and birth certificate before they're allowed to apply for citizenship also. Other countries, you can just register the birth certificate of your newborn. A lot of times you're going to need your parents' birth certificates, your grandparents, and so on. So depending on how far back you want to go, there's not really a limit when it comes to citizenship by descent. So you look at like Hungary or Italy, those countries allow you to keep going back and back. Sometimes what'll end up happening is you're going to need your inline, so the parent that was born there, their direct descendant, and so on. We call that the inline um, uh, parents. You're going to need their documents definitely. You may or may not need their spouses. So, for example, if your grandfather was born in Italy, you're going to need your grandmother's birth certificate. But if your grandfather was born in Canada, you might not need your grandmother's birth certificate. Marriage certificates, same thing. These can also get apostilled, and they should be when they're required. Naturalization documents. I recommend going through NARA, NARA. They're much faster than the USGIS. I probably got that acronym wrong, but NARA is really the one you want to go through. And what'll happen is at the end of this, I'll give you an email address, and I'm going to help people individually walk through some of these steps. But again, this presentation is more that broad overview of citizenships, how you can get them. So where to apply? It depends. It depends on your country. Let's take Germany, for example. You can apply at a consulate. You can apply directly to the BVA. When you apply directly, it's great. Your application goes straight there, but you don't have a second set of eyes on those documents to double check. A lot of times when you apply at a consulate, they're going to forward your application on, but they're going to check everything. They're going to make sure it meets their minimum requirements. And then someone else is going to make that determination. So your consulate will 99% of the time be where you go, 90% of the time. This is where you live. They could ask to see not only your driver's license, they might ask to see bills. It depends how strict the consulate is. Let's say, for example, you're living in Vermont, and you're like, oh, the closest consulate to me is in New York. Well, you need to check with that consulate, because a lot of times in New York, they'll just service the tri-state area. So they'll service New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And if that's the case, that means you might have to go to Washington, D.C. to put in your application. So it's just something to keep in mind. The place you think you have to go might not actually be where you have to go. So contact them, talk to your local consulate. So let's talk about countries. I'm not going to go through every line on here, but this kind of gives you an idea of generations back and which country. This is just a chart I've made for my own reference. If they allow dual citizenship or not. So like Korea and Japan, they don't allow it, but you can get a visa to be able to go to those countries. India doesn't allow it, but you can get what's called the overseas citizen of India, and so they call it the OCI. That allows you to live and work in India just like a citizen, but you don't have their actual passport. Also, renunciation. Some countries won't let you renounce your citizenship. Oh yeah. Also, as we talked about before, the global taxation. Again, ITHRA. I can't pronounce them. I'm sorry. They're terrible with the global taxing as well. They're just like the U.S. Doesn't matter where you live, you're gonna be taxed. But if you look, no one else is really doing it right now, and you can't renounce that citizenship. So it's something to keep in mind. Um, I would hesitate to get that if I was eligible, but that's me. In military service, so I'm going through right now and I'm trying to figure out, who is necessary, how old do they have to be. All of this stuff can change. So just be aware, military service, if they don't require it, they could at some point. We have even more. Um, Again, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I just wanted you guys to be able to see. It is an exhaustive list. There's, I think, 59 or 58 different countries I have on here for citizenship by descent for 2 or 3+ years. This comes up a lot. DNA-based citizenship. So Sierra Leone, not a country I would necessarily recommend. They allow DNA-based citizenship. Benin, they're hopefully going to get DNA-based citizenship. It is in the works, last I knew. So that'll be interesting to see if they do that. I have read articles online where people were able to use DNA to prove paternity on their birth certificate. And so they then had their birth certificate amended. And so they were able to go in line from the new parent, from their biological parent to their biological grandparent, and be able to get citizenship. So you could use DNA that way. Let's say 23andMe says you're 100% Italian. You can't bring that to the Italian consulate. They're going to say, we don't care. We want to see the documents that prove it. It's all about those documents. So some pitfalls when applying. Don't lie. Don't try to pull one over. Their entire job is to figure out, are you lying? Are you trying to skirt around the rules? If you can't find a birth record, go to a church. Try to find the church record. I know for me personally, when I was applying, I had to go back to the 1800s, and they didn't keep records. The government didn't keep records that far. So I had to go contact every church I could find in the area where my grandparents grew up, see if I could get a baptismal record. You can't get an appointment. This is a common problem with like Italian citizenship. I'd say look at midnight. Midnight being midnight in the country you're pursuing. So, for example, with Italy, you want what's midnight at Rome time. You look up when does it come? How far back are they? I think like 6 hours from like the East Coast. So, okay, you want to look at like 6 p.m. So midnight is when you want to start looking when those appointments get released. That's a common theme. It's not like.
Well, we have a question.
Sure.
Slime Psychic asks, which ancestry applies to adopted people? The adopted family or the birth one?
Yes. I was going to get into this a little bit later, but I'll answer it right now. So it's kind of both. The easier route is whatever's on your birth certificate. That is the easiest route.
Well, hang on a second. I've somehow lost the audio. Dang.
No.
Testing. What's going on here? Hey, I'm going to.
Testing.
Yeah. Keep talking. Cause.
Can you hear me? You hear me?
Oh. Hang on. I know
Hello,
what's
testing.
I know what the problem is. I got to convince the computer to let go and let me do this. Come on. Um, okay, hold on just a second.